Welcome to Cocktail Mode, the podcast where me, Andy, and my good mate Dave pick a retro game and try and find a cocktail to go along with it. Today's game is the absolutely spectacular Jet Set Radio for the Dreamcast. One of my top 5 games ever made. And I may have said that more than 5 times before, but this time it's true.
Covering its various sequels, spin-offs, remakes, including the fantastic Bum Rash Cider Punk.
So, Jet Set Radio, or as it has to be said, Jet Set Radio!
I fucking love it. I'd forgotten how good it is. I was playing it this week for a little bit on Steam.
Yes.
Which is obviously the 2012, I think it was.
Yeah, good version.
Re-release.
Yeah.
Brilliant version.
Yeah.
If you don't have the bug where it doesn't save your game.
Oh, shit, really?
Yep.
Oh,
so every time I loaded the fucking thing up, here's the tutorial again.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
Fuck off. The unskippable tutorial that I have to play every time I load it. Luckily, somebody has found a fix.
Right.
You have to literally download a hex editor and edit the exe file.
Oh, fucking hell.
It is a great version, I've got to say.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
It plays in full widescreen. The graphics are so crisp. They're really, really good looking. And there's also a little app that you can find online if you search for more than 4 seconds, where you can replace all your custom in-game graffiti with cocktail mode logos.
Which looks awesome. Dave showed me this. It looks great. Our logo looks brilliant in Jet Set Radio. It's a really good mix.
It came out much, much better than I ever thought it would. I've got to be honest. So yeah, I plastered it with that and chucked it on Steam. I thought that'd be a good little plug. There's probably only 5 people in the world playing Jet Set Radio on Steam at the moment.
You, me, and 3 others.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine it had a bit of an uptick when Bum Rash Cider Punk came out.
That did create a bit of a spike in its popularity, but since 1 month and a few days ago, it's delisted.
Really?
All of Sega's Dreamcast and Mega Drive games have been delisted and removed from Steam. So if you already own them, great, but tough shit if you want to buy them now.
Oh, that's
my only assumption is that they're planning to make their own sort of Game Pass thing.
Yeah, well, they're doing something with the old IPs, aren't they? We mentioned it in Crazy Taxi. There's supposed to be a new Crazy Taxi coming. There's a new Jet Set Radio supposed to be coming as well.
New Shinobi, new Streets of Rage, and a new... What's the other one? Golden Axe.
Yeah. You know, maybe they'll be good, I don't know, but it's shitty practice. It really is. But it just goes to show, doesn't it? Nothing's really yours. I mean, at least they're not doing that wank that Konami did when they basically took games back off people. So it's not that bad. But it is shit, because if you don't have it, apologies, but it's a fantastic version of Jet Set Radio.
Yeah. I mean, you can get physical copies. It came out on the PS3.
Yes. It's on a compilation on the 360, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think. And if you're a PC gamer, you know, there are ways. Almost like a manifestation of rose-tinted glasses. It looks exactly as good as you remember it looking. Although, if you have the VGA cable for a Dreamcast and a decent TV, it looks fantastic anyway. But, in the proper, nice widescreen, nice and crisp. I think they're only 720, aren't they? Although, no, they can't be.
No, full HD.
Yeah, full HD. But yeah.
It certainly looks it.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful game.
Yeah. Fantastic to look at. Really, really good. It does add, actually, analog stick support for moving the camera.
Oh, well, that's a win. I played it a lot. I've got 24 out of 30 achievements on that game. And I've never tried for any of them. That's just me playing Jet Set Radio. Yeah. So it is now and always was one of the best looking, one of the best sounding games that ever existed.
Still is.
Yeah.
I booted it up this week and I couldn't believe how good it looks. I can remember when I first saw it, probably on a demo disc. I just thought, oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah. That's what all games should look like from now.
Yes. I doubt it was the first cel-shaded game, but it's the first one I remember.
No, I think it was. It's one of the things that I sort of set out to try and find.
Yeah.
And as far as anybody can tell, it is the first cel-shaded game.
What a start.
There may well be something else that predates it, but all the sources I could find, possibly lazily, said, yes, it's the first cel-shaded game.
Wow. I mean, what a way to start. Fucking hell. Yeah, it's just stunning. Stunning.
I was reading up on the development of it, and the concept like the art, the style, the look of it came before making the game. So they knew what they wanted it to look like. They knew what the idea was, and then the technology followed afterwards.
Yeah, they're a strange company from our bit, the developers, in-house Sega team, with a strange catalogue of games. Really odd. They've got like football games and they seem to have sports games in abundance, and then just odd little things. Even after Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Radio Future, they were still sort of went on for a little bit and made odd other games. They never seem to have other than sort of, I guess you could argue that rollerblading is sort of sports based, but I mean not the way Jet Set Radio plays, really, is it? It doesn't play like Tony Hawk's does. It doesn't play like, what's it called, aggressive inline on the PS2.
Aggressive inline. You may as well call it aggressive masturbating.
Wow.
Out of those two games, I know which I'd rather play.
Can you roller skate?
God, no.
Your pride doesn't allow it.
Yeah. My pride, my balance, and my obvious weight do not allow me to get on roller skates. No, I never could, even as a kid. I could ride a skateboard quite easily.
Yeah.
Skated a little bit, but yeah, roller skates just never really worked for me.
I'd be amazed if I didn't sort of entertain the idea of learning how to rollerblade when I was playing Jet Set Radio, because it just makes it look so fucking cool, doesn't it?
Oh, no, I find a game version of something makes me want to do it less in real life. Yeah.
Well, I can never be this good, so I never want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Or you look at what they're doing and where they're doing it, and you think, yeah, random street in Bedford is not the same as this glorious fictional version of Tokyo.
I mean, Bedford bus station and Shibuya bus terminal separated at birth. No. That's the thing as well. I was reading a guy called Christian Donlan, who I may have mentioned before. I love his writing. He works for Eurogamer mostly. Always writes brilliant articles and reviews of games. And I was reading, he wrote a love letter to Jet Set Radio Future, not Jet Set Radio. And he talks about how the cities are almost like little dioramas when you have to sort of figure out and sort of learn and build that. And he's like, but when you think about it, all games, all places and all games are really like that. In Jet Set Radio, you kind of feel it more, and you have to learn like the little routes and the things. I think it's a really good point, and the locations are brilliantly designed, and just they come together and feel like real places. Obviously they're based on real places, but they feel like, even though they're very cartoony and even though it's not a realistic game, they feel like real places. And I think I don't know if have you played Jet Set Radio Future?
I've not. No, I never had an Xbox, and as far as I know, it's never come out in any other format.
No, it hasn't. It's not even backwards compatible on any of the newer Xboxes. You can play it on the original Xbox and the 360, but anything after that you can't play it on. I don't want to go straight in and go, it's not as good, but it isn't as good. It was the first game I got when I got an Xbox. It's funny, there was a geezer I used to work with, and I didn't know him particularly well at this point. We ended up being quite good mates. But he was right. He said, "Do you know anybody who might want an Xbox?" I'm like, yeah, I'd have an Xbox. What do you want for it? I think it was like 30 quid. And I was like, yeah, and it was chipped, as every Xbox in existence was. There wasn't an Xbox on this planet that didn't have a chip on it. So yeah, I got that off him. The first game that I wanted to play, and I don't think he had it as a copied disc, and I didn't know how to get hold of copied discs for that at the time, so I went off and bought it. Was Jet Set Radio Future, and at the time I bounced off it really hard. I was just like, no, this is not Jet Set Radio. This is not, this is just wrong. There's something wrong with this. I couldn't quite figure out what it was. There are a couple of specific things. The mini game, basically, for doing graffiti, you don't do that. You just hold the trigger down.
That's no fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is what the ethos seems to be. Make it easier.
Is the focus more on the skating?
It's the focus is more on not getting in the way of the skating. So you don't stop to paint graffiti. You always move. And with the enemy's police character type things, you can barge into them and knock them over and then spray them on the back to stop them attacking you, rather than just having to run away the whole time. And it almost feels like what it's trying to do is basically not get in the way of the fun. And there's no time limits. But because there's no time limits, that means there's no goal. There's no, there's no level. You get, is it 5 or 7 different levels you can score?
There's no urgency.
Ratings. Yeah, exactly. So what they've done is make it a very passive game. And it's still quite a great fun to skate around, and it works. They've added the ability to change the trick you're doing just by pressing a button. But even that, it's just that all you do is press a button. I don't know, like you, I remember being very proud of being able to turn around and skate backwards and then forwards at will. I could choose when I wanted to do it. It was not a straightforward thing to be able to do in Jet Set Radio. Yeah. Jet Set Radio Future, press a button. And it's like everything was made easier, and it seems like they're going for a different angle, and I just think it loses something in that. I mean, it gains something. You can just skate and grind and jump and do for hours, and the characters are a lot more floaty feeling. They stay in the air for ages, and you can move them around in the air to a greater extent. So it feels very different, and I think you either loved that or you didn't. I mean, there are people who much prefer Jet Set Radio Future to Jet Set Radio, and there are people like me who just prefer Jet Set Radio. And I like a challenge. I like a game to have goals, and to being able to skate round to your bus somewhere in one continuous loop was not an easy thing to do.
It's very fucking difficult.
It was not easy, and so it was rewarding to be able to do that. The equivalent on Jet Set Radio Future is incredibly easy to do. You can skate around the million different things. You can skate vertically up lampposts and keep things going like that. It's very forgiving, very much very accessible. And I can see the appeal in that. There are games that are just fun to just do stuff like that in. But I don't think that's what I want. Certainly wasn't what I wanted from a Jet Set Radio sequel in 2002 or whatever it came out. I think I didn't bounce off as hard. I actually played it for a good little while. The challenge of being good at Jet Set Radio, it's that thing I've talked about before, that playing a game smoothly, making it look good, playing a game as smooth, the opposite of what we talked about in Gran Turismo, where you always know what your car is on the replay because it's the one that is the opposite of that, basically.
It's coming back to flashback, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
That fluidity of movement, that combination of things. The Tony Hawk's combos are a perfect example, and that's probably its closest comparison. Yeah, for me, certainly.
Yes.
I think it does it really well when you're good at it.
Yes.
When you're not very good at it, Jet Set Radio looks like shit.
Yes, because you spend the whole time crawling around on the floor underneath a pile of policemen.
Getting shot and beaten and bitten and fucked up.
What I like to call African American simulation. But no, it is, and that's the difference between Jet Set Radio Future and Jet Set Radio. Jet Set Radio, you have to be good to be able to get that flow. In Jet Set Radio Future, you can just do it. You don't have to be particular. You don't have to know the map. You don't have to do that. And I watched an interesting video. I didn't take a note of who it was, so apologies to you, person who won't listen and won't care anyway. But talking about Bum Rash Cider Punk and how they felt it was the middle ground between those two. It was a challenge, and I've played Bum Rash Cider Punk, and it's kind of true. I don't like it as much as they did, but it...
Say it again. What was it? Bum Rash Cider Punk.
Welcome to cocktail mode. But yeah, it does. It feels somewhere in between the two, and it clearly, Bum Rash Cider Punk, it's getting worse. Now you've made me realise it. Cider Funk. That game is, it couldn't be more obviously a love letter to Jet Set Radio and Future.
It's not even hidden, is it?
No, they're very open about it, and it's very much a thing. Yeah. But it's almost like by being so similar, it certainly made me just want to play Jet Set Radio rather than be playing a game that was an homage and a slight evolution of Jet Set Radio. But I'm sure there are people who feel completely differently. It's a very popular game, and it is a very good game.
Have you played the other one? Is it Hi-Fi Rush?
No, but yeah, I do want to. In terms of more modern skating games that hold a candle to Jet Set Radio, I mentioned before Rollerdrome. To me, that is a game that it's not anything like Jet Set Radio, but it did feel more like it than anything else. The way the tricks and the movement felt was more Jet Set Radio than any of these other homages, and it couldn't have been more different. It was more a love letter to Rollerball than it was to Jet Set Radio. But the movement and the locations and the fact that as much as the style is very different to Jet Set Radio, it had its own style, and it just 100% doubled down on that style and said, this is how we are doing things.
I think with that, the reason they feel similar is because they've both very, very well captured the movement. If you look at the Tony Hawk's games, you stand rigidly with one leg and kick with the other, and that's the movement. But with rollerblading or roller skating, or whatever you want to call it, it's very much a kick with both legs, and it's kind of a weird sort of side to side swaying motion. And that's, I think both games have captured that very well.
That's a really good point. Yeah,
it's one of the things that playing it recently, having not played Jet Set Radio for God knows how many years, 5, 6, 10, 15 years, I don't know, the movement of the characters is a beautiful thing to watch. It's really, really interesting to look at the animations and see how they move.
Yeah.
But when you sort of stop powering through like that, everything just sort of solids up.
Yes.
Like when you turn, you sort of turn as a single solid brick. And that's it. You just sort of turn around a corner, and then you go back into the very fluid, flowing side-to-side movement. And it does that. It does it in the half pipe sections, which, truth be told, are very good.
No.
The character goes from this very fluid, very movement, very sort of dynamic character to this very sort of on rails and not a straight rail. Bizarrely.
Yeah, not in a fun way.
Yeah. It's just like locked into this immovable object that might go up the ramp and might not. So you jump at some random point and hope for the best.
Yeah, and if there's, I mean, I will not have a bad word said against Jet Set Radio, except if you tell me that the half pipe bit's this shit. No, not allowed. Other than if you're going to talk to me about Rob Zombie, then we can swear all day long. But
I don't need to. Not in the version I've played.
No.
And I don't like him anyway, so don't care.
Yeah, the weird thing is, whether or not you were a fan of Rob Zombie, it doesn't sound like Dave is. I'm certainly not. It's jarringly not the right sort of music for the game.
Doesn't fit. I've never played. I don't think I've ever played a version of Jet Set Radio with that song in it, because it's not in the European version.
No.
As far as I know, I've never played it with that in it. And when I was watching YouTube videos earlier, which are all American people talking about it, they go on about, the Rob Zombie song. The what? I don't remember that.
Yeah, no, it wasn't there. And
I
only know it from watching videos myself, and it just doesn't fit. And it's such a beautifully created. It's a great mix of original and licensed soundtrack, isn't it? It's the guy's name who I can't remember, and you've got the Wikipedia.
Oh
page
no,
open.
fuck off! You can murder this one after making me say the guy from Gran Turismo 4 fucking times.
Right, give me a second.
I'm not falling for that one again. I'm looking forward to this.
Hideki Naganuma. So Hideki Naganuma. Fuck's sake. It just makes me feel like a racist piece of shit. I just can't say his name. I don't want to. I'm not. Sorry, Hideki. One thing I know about Japanese, I worked with Japanese people when I was at Fuji. Worked with them quite a lot. Is they say their words so much faster than it seems possible to say them in English. Like Hideki would sound like it's got one syllable. But yes, Naganuma, Hideki Naganuma. Sorry for saying that very slowly and probably wrong, but that's his name. Very famous. He did the soundtrack for Bum Rash Cider Punk as well, as both Jet Set Radio games.
Yes, this is one of the things I was looking up earlier. He's contributed to every sort of love letter and pseudo version of Jet Set Radio that's ever come out. He's been like, here's a song.
Top man, yeah.
Quite happy to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it makes your game as good as the original, quite happy to support it.
Yeah, good luck with that. the mix of his music and the licensed music, it's just beautiful. It's just brilliantly done, and it just felt like something very different at the time and very new. And it had Jurassic 5 on there, which are one of my favourite bands anyway. So that being in the game, and then discovered Guitar Vader through them, who are a great band.
That's just ticked off the 2 notes that I had for this entire fucking game. Must discuss Jurassic 5 and Guitar Vader. So had you heard of Guitar Vader before this?
No, not at all.
No. Had you heard of Pizzicato 5 though?
Yes.
Yeah, I had. And I always imagined that Pizzicato 5 are on this soundtrack, and they're not.
They're not, are they? No. No,
Because
really
they seem
weird.
like they should be.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because they're a very similar sounding sort of band.
Yeah.
And they were one of the few sort of Japanese bands that, certainly in Europe, we'd ever heard of. There weren't very many of them. Shonen Knife are probably about the only other one.
No, that is really interesting you say that, because I had exactly the same thought when I was looking through soundtracks earlier and trying to find stuff. I was like, sure, Pizzicato 5 was on here, but no, they're not. But yeah, I've got somewhere CDs of Guitar Vader albums and singles that I imported at the time, because I just fell completely in love with them, because they just sound like a proper garage punk band, a proper scrappy, not got two producers to rub together, really like fun, enjoyable punk band in the real meaning of it. Do you know what I mean? It just seemed like a bloke and a bird who just wanted to make music, and this is what we come up with.
Yeah, very DIY, independent, like early White Stripes.
Exactly, yeah, that really, as I hate overproduced music, and it's the exact opposite of that. But yeah, I miss them. They, as far as I'm aware, they played exactly one gig in the UK ever, and it was in a pub near Gatwick Airport. So I imagine they were just passing through and thought, let's make 500 quid on the way back to Japan. But yeah, but I saw it in, I think, probably Time Out magazine. I was probably getting at the time, and didn't manage to get to it. And that's one of I don't have very many regrets in my life, but that's definitely one of them, because I imagine that would have been superb. Brilliant, great, just so much fucking exactly the right sort of music for the game.
Yeah, Jet Set Radio to me is probably the game after Tony Hawk where the soundtrack is one of the most important parts of the game.
Yes.
There are very few other games where the soundtrack is as important.
So do you think, and this is a genuine question because I don't have an answer for it, because I've literally just thought of it right now, how much do you think that has that got to do with the fact that when we were playing these games was a period of our lives when we were into music a lot more than we are now as grown-ups?
I'd say it wasn't the most important aspect of it, because it was a very good soundtrack.
Yeah,
it helped. I think if it had been an awful soundtrack, like, let's think of a Dreamcast game that's got an awful soundtrack, any other Dreamcast game.
Excuse me, Rez is on the Dreamcast.
Metropolis Street Racer.
Ugh.
Have you listened to the music from Metropolis Street Racer in the last 20 years?
Oh, I mean, if you look up the word forgettable in a dictionary, it says see Metropolis Street Racer soundtrack.
I like to think that's why the Dreamcast died. Ignore all the marketing problems and everything else. It was just the shit music they put on every fucking game.
I don't think I have the music on from Metropolis Street Racer. I think
this is one of the things I was just about to come to. Most other games, I turn the music off and play my own music.
Yeah,
because I can find something that fits the game better than the god awful bad rock or dance music that Sega have decided to put in this particular game. I'm looking at you, Tokyo Highway Challenge. Fucking hell. But Tony Hawk, Jet Set Radio, spot on.
Yeah.
Exactly the right music for those games. Possibly the only band that I would put alongside Jet Set Radio that aren't featured on the soundtrack because they didn't exist yet is Gorillaz.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The first Gorillaz album came out about 6 months or so after Jet Set Radio.
Oh, really?
And the feel of that first album, and not every song, but a lot of those songs go very well with the sort of overall feel of Jet Set Radio.
Yes. Well, I think it helped by Del the Funky Homo Sapien being a big part of the original Gorillaz lineup, and being a contemporary of the Jurassic 5. A slightly different type of hip hop, but not a million miles away. I think this is going off tangent. I think the most disappointing soundtrack to me is San Andreas.
Really?
Because if you look at the track list on San Andreas, it looks great. I don't know whether the radio's different. The good songs don't seem to come up as often, and it didn't. Vice City made me like songs that I never liked before.
Vice City as a soundtrack to a game is perfect.
Yeah,
because it's very much that specific 1986. What songs from 1986 can we get on there that really fit well? And yet they still, for whatever reason, they didn't get Push It by Salt and Pepper.
What a track.
It's conspicuous by its absence for me. Absolutely. But no, I know what you mean. I can't remember anything on the San Andreas soundtrack. Yeah, I can remember most of the songs on Vice City.
It was so much a part of the game. In the way that, you know, Jet Set Radio, the music is part of the game. Vice City, the music felt like part of the game. And in San Andreas, it didn't. It felt like in the peripheral of the game. It never really emerged with it as well. But yeah, I hated 80s music before Vice City. And I think it's because, you know, growing up in the 90s, the previous era always seemed shit. It's like that's so old-fashioned and shit.
You're brainwashed to believe the previous generation is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, you know, Vice City comes along, and Toto by Africa is all of a sudden one of my favourite songs ever written.
Here's an interesting fact I took away from the development notes that I found on Jet Set Radio. They specifically and intentionally made Jet Set Radio impossible to port to the PS2.
Really?
Yep.
Good men. And ladies, probably.
They made the background and the amount of visible NPCs on screen at any one time so much so that it wouldn't work on the PS2 with its lower memory. Almost a middle finger to the PS2. Which, ironically, I don't think had even come out.
No.
They must have had a dev kit and thought, well, you know.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Someone's going to want to port this at some point. Let's make it so they can't.
I think Smarbit made like 2 games for PS2, and they were both like, one was a shit football game, like soccer game. And I can't remember what the other one was, because they did Jet Set Radio Future for the Xbox and a game called Gun Valkyrie for the Xbox, which couldn't be more different than Jet Set Radio Future. And Gun Valkyrie is a third-person action shooter, basically, to sort of minimise it. But it's also hard as balls. One of the most difficult games I think you'd ever play, and a really difficult game to play well. It's like, I do remember that in Gran Turismo I mentioned Omega Boost and how the game made you feel like an absolute fucking rock star. Gun Valkyrie makes you feel like an absolute fucking chump. It's so difficult, but it's one of those games that really, if you can battle through and learn the mechanics and learn how to play the game, you will eventually feel like a rock star, because it is hard.
Do you know what that sounds like to me? Vortex on the SNES.
Oh, what a game.
That's a game that if you are new to it and you're not very good at it, you will be shit.
Yeah.
But once you know what you're doing, you know how to play it, it's really, really good.
Yes. Yeah, I love Vortex. If you don't know Vortex, it was Argonaut Software's follow-up to Star Fox, with featuring a transforming robot. And a brilliant, brilliant game, but it used all 6 of the SNES's buttons in combination with each other in some way or another in order to play it properly. Because there was 4 modes. There was either what they called the hard shell mode, which is basically a tank without a gun.
It was like a mech, a tank, a plane, and
car. Little zippy car. So the car was fast. The jet was obviously flying and very fast, but with always offset in that rock paper fizz way fast but really weak, and the hard shell was slow but really, really like almost impenetrable. But you could go from any one of those 4 things to any one of the others by pressing a combination of 2 buttons on the controller. And that you had to know that and have it in your muscle memory in order. You had to go from bombing across the thing as a jet to being sat on the ground as the hard shells in like an instant to be able to do well at that game. And Gun Valkyrie's a bit like that, only more so, basically. It's so hard, but it is
more than Vortex.
Yeah.
Fuck that. I'm out.
What's interesting to me is, again, coming back to Bum Rash Cider Punk. Bum Rash Cider Punk, one of the main...
Bum Rash Cider Punk.
Bum Rash Cider Punk. Anyway, as it will now forever be known, Bum Rash Cyberpunk. I can't even say it wrong, for fuck's sake. Their one addition is a jetpack, a single like boost jetpack to make add basically a double jump mechanic. And it's almost like they've taken those Smarbit games, Jet Set Radio Future, and Gun Valkyrie, and taken the bits they liked out of all of them and put them into Bum Rash Cider Punk. I don't know how true that is, but it really does feel that way, because it's a very punchy jetpack in Gun Valkyrie. It doesn't last a long time. I don't know if you've ever played Vanquish. on the 360 or PS3.
No.
It's one of those games, and very similar to Gun Valkyrie, in that you think you should be basically jet sliding around an arena, beating things up and being really, really cool. And you can do that, but you have to be good at the game first. When you first do it, you slide for about 2 seconds and then stop, because you don't know how to maintain the thing. So
I have seen a small amount of Bum Rash Cider Punk, and what I gained from it was that there's, like you say, like a sort of dash ability.
Yeah.
Like a mid-air dash, like a short thing to like get you onto a rail.
Yeah.
I'm going to check it out. I've never played it because I don't need to. Still got Jet Set Radio.
Yeah.
I don't need the version of Jet Set Radio for people who haven't got it.
I would say it sort of adds more or less sort of combat against other characters, which I think was a bit of a misstep. I think they should have ditched that idea entirely.
This is one of the things, I can't remember what game it was we were talking about. We were talking about pacifist games.
Yeah.
And games where you don't physically like attack or hurt people. Jet Set Radio is quite a pacifist game.
It really is, yeah. I mean, those helicopter pilots probably don't think so, but you know.
While we're on the police, is not the response to you a little bit over the top? Do you not think? Is it just me? Or is some kid on rollerblades doing some graffiti a little bit sort of over the top response? Send in the dogs, send in the SWAT team, send in the tanks, send in the helicopters. The captain of the police force himself with his magnum comes running after you and shoots you constantly. It's so over the top. I love it. It's like a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, something that is less so, I think, in Jet Set Radio Future. It feels a little less over the top. Because Jet Set Radio Future, I probably should have mentioned, is kind of one of those halfway between a remake and a sequel kind of felt vibes. It's very much along the lines of a bit of both. And yeah, the police it tried to make it not more serious. More serious is the wrong word, but sort of less comic, I guess.
The police in Jet Set Radio are only there to move you along.
Yes,
realistically, aren't they? That's
absolutely.
It's an element of threat that keeps you moving, that makes you think, "Oh shit, I need to finish this level. I need to do the thing."
Yes, that's it. And coming back to the difference between it and Future, that is exactly what they seem to have decided was something they didn't want in Jet Set Radio Future. They wanted you to be able to take it at your own pace, do what you want, and it's kind of admirable. I kind of see where they were going with it. I just don't think it. I think perhaps they went a bit too far. I think there still needs. There doesn't feel to be like there's a word, agency. There is no agency to the game, and as much as it's fun to skate around, there's no the sense of reward. You know. Coming back to that whole thing about doing the graffiti, the little mini game. If you do those patterns without ever returning the stick to the neutral position, you get more points than if you do. Do you know this?
So if you make it like one continuous movement combination thing. No, I didn't. I've never noticed.
This is the thing. It never tells you in the manual. It never tells you anywhere. This is the thing that I worked out playing it on the
I don't play games for high scores, so I don't give a fuck.
But it's one of those things, again, when you talk about the flow of a game and how it all fits together, and that it really does kind of feel in keeping with what Jet Set Radio was about. And and I just think that's the thing. And then to have that, and doing that to me is always a goal I had doing it, not for the points, but just because, you know, it was a cool way to do it. They'd intentionally designed all those patterns so that the start of one shape was the end of the previous one. And
well, you know what it's supposed to be, don't you?
It's supposed to be like spraying a thing.
Yeah, representation of you actually moving a spray can round with your hand.
Absolutely.
It should be a fluid movement.
Yeah.
It should continue from one to the other.
As best as you can on one of the worst controllers ever made, you know.
You take that back.
Too fucking small.
No, just wrong in every single dimension.
Except the VMU, which was a masterpiece.
Oh, I meant to ask, have you played it recently on your Dreamcast?
Yeah.
Did you use your Rumble Pack?
No, fuck.
Ah, fucking hell.
Bollocks. Yeah, do you know what?
Why did you buy it if you didn't fucking use it?
Do you know what? I don't even know where it is. I'm such a prick. Genuinely.
It's like the one peripheral I never bought for the Dreamcast. Because I thought, why fucking bother?
Says the man who evangelised about the Rumble on Metal Gear Solid to me.
Also, this is the man who bought the fucking fishing rod.
Oh, Sega Bass Fishing. What's the soundtrack like on Sega Bass Fishing?
I'll give you one guess.
Who's the American sort of ska-sounding band on the Jet Set Radio soundtrack?
I don't know. It's interesting you asked that because I was playing it earlier on today and I thought, I don't know this band. I thought that this doesn't sound familiar.
No.
I don't know if this was on the original version or if it's part of the 2012.
Absolutely was. Like you, I was listening to soundtracks. Was kind of one of my main bits of research for this podcast was listening to various soundtracks of Jet Set Radio. The game starts. The first sound of the game is the sound of that tuning in of a radio, isn't it? That's that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
just that, you just go, oh yeah. I am 24 years in the past, like instantly. Absolutely incredible.
I'm almost young again.
Oh, no, I wouldn't go that far. Right. I think it might be the Reps.
Okay.
British rock band credited for the song About the City on the Jet Set Radio soundtrack.
Wow. No?
Yeah.
Never heard of them. Didn't know.
No, I mean, they could be, as little and unknown as Guitar Vader were, I guess. It clearly wasn't. There were obviously some well-known bands on the soundtrack, but
how well-known or not were Guitar Vader at the time of this coming out?
Oh, not very at all. They were very small.
Were they quite fresh?
Yeah. No, the songs are off their first album. They're not even their album, the first EP. In our Crazy Taxi episode, you said that Crazy Taxi was the game that basically defined the look of the Dreamcast, the way Dreamcast games look. More than Jet Set Radio?
Yeah, I was wrong. No, I do stand by that. Crazy Taxi for me defines the Dreamcast in that it's primarily an arcade experience in the home.
Yeah.
I would argue that Jet Set Radio is not an arcade experience.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. I'll give you that.
I can't see anybody playing Jet Set Radio in an arcade.
No, that's a really fair point.
As much as I love Jet Set Radio and I want it to be the flag bearer for the Dreamcast,
yeah,
it doesn't tick that box of the arcade at home for me.
Soul Calibur was the same, wasn't it? I mean, that was better than arcade perfect Soul Calibur, and you're right. I think that's entirely fair. But I think when it comes to games, if someone said to me, "Why should I own a Dreamcast?" then Jet Set Radio would probably be my answer.
It'd definitely be very high on the list.
Obviously, if the Fantastic Team version... Well, the Fantastic Team version doesn't exist anymore, apparently.
No.
So, here we go.
Technically, I don't own it. I can only play it because you own it.
I know you're not the sort of person to do this, because I've known you a very long time. But were you to consider games in a hierarchical form of any sort, where would you place Jet Set Radio if you were to have a top X number of games ever made?
Is this because you frequently rank every game we talk about in your top 5 games of all time?
Yeah. But if I can guarantee that any of the games that we've talked about is genuinely in my top 5 games of all time, it's Jet Set Radio. I hesitate to say top 3, but there are a few games, and I mentioned this in the sort of the end of the last episode. Just playing, seeing, hearing a game, I can't think of anything that makes me as happy as Jet Set Radio, and I don't think there's any better measure of anything than that. So yeah, I was just wondering, because I know you were a big fan of it. If you were, would you say top 5, 10, 20? What would you reckon?
I honestly don't know. I mean, if you had asked me prior to this week, how highly do you rate Jet Set Radio?
Yeah. I
would have quite quickly said, oh, very highly. But in going back and playing it sort of basically from fresh, which is what I've effectively done in this sort of recent playthrough, it's not a game that really gives a flying fuck about whether you're any good at it or not. Is it? It doesn't pull its punches with you. There's not much leeway given. It
does have the echoes of hardcore are there, aren't they?
Yeah, which I do appreciate and I do like, but coming back to it after a long absence is like, oh, either I was much better at this back in the day or I wasn't as good as I thought I was back in the day.
I think that, again, genuinely, and it's interesting to hear you say that, because gaming sensibilities have changed. People expect less resistance in their games than they used to. But you're a man whose favourite game series of recent years is Dark Souls.
Yeah, I know.
Which is not that.
The thing is, I think the problem... I'm not so sure I would say problem. I have an expectation with Jet Set Radio that I may or may not have had when I first played it, but I expect the movement to be more akin to Tony Hawk than what it actually is.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised when it's very slow, when you're literally running on foot uphill.
Yeah.
Up a set of stairs or whatever. And the movement options always seem very limited. Like there's not a lot you can really do. Like, you've got to make a big jump. Okay, so you run back a bit, you get a bit of a run up, and you go for it. And a lot of the big sort of movement options that work aren't very clear and are never really made very clear to you from the start.
Yeah.
But the tutorial does a very good job of teaching you the very basics, like how to skate in a straight line, turn a bit.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the first tutorial. Great. Well done. You managed to move in a straight line, then turn 90 degrees, then go a bit forward. Brilliant. Well done. Here's an unskippable little cutscene of this girl dancing for 30 seconds. Then we'll go into the next bit, which is do a little bit of a grind along some rails and then do a little jump and off you go. Great. And at the end of that, we'll do 30 seconds of dancing. And then eventually you'll get to go to the next bit. It's not a game that values your time, is what I'm trying to say. The Steam version is a little bit better. You can skip like the dancing sequences and things.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't like it as much anymore as I used to.
There's the Dave we all know and love.
Yeah. I do enjoy it. And once I got the hang of it again, I did start to enjoy it more.
Yeah.
But in my head, it was faster. It was more fluid. You could link things together better.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that is viewing it through the rose-tinted cataracts.
Okay. So, thank you for being Dave. This is what you're here for.
That's right.
I disagree, but I think part of the reason I disagree is because I've never stopped playing Jet Set Radio.
That's the thing. I did for a long time.
Never stopped playing it. And I can link things together. I do go through levels quickly. I can basically go round Shibuya bus terminal and complete it. Other than the annoying fact that there's like 4 buses in the middle of a level that you have to do
3.
as well. They're annoying. But the whole outside thing I can do in one whole complete run. And then
I found you do the 3 buses first.
Yeah.
Because everything else you can kind of do on the run.
Also, you want to be off the ground when the police arrive.
Yeah, yes.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I played the game over and over and over again, and this is the thing that I believe, and again, it's one of the reasons I love Jet Set Radio. Games aren't about playing through once. They're not about experiencing a story. They're not a film. That's not what it should be about. This is why, to me, the Uncharted games are shit games. This is why The Last of Us... Sorry, there's 2 games by the same developer back to back. But this is why this version of games doesn't work for me, is because I think a game should be played over and over again until... Beating a game is fine. Beating a game looking like a fucking rock star is what it's all about. Yeah, I mean, I should be able to beat end bosses without taking a hit. I should be able to get around Shibuya bus terminal without touching the fucking floor. I mean, I should be able to hit that fucking billboard off that rail and then go round the corner to the next one and go up that fucking... And so all the things that you say it isn't, to me it is. And that's what... And again, coming back to your... love of Dark Souls. You watch me play Dark Souls, and that'd be like watching you play Jet Set Radio by the sounds of it.
I know. Watching me play Dark Souls is like watching me play Jet Set Radio. I just persevere and push through it.
I just generally think when a game is made for it, and Jet Set Radio is, because it gives you a rating at the end, and this is what tells you that this is a game that is not supposed to be played once. It's a very Japanese way of making games.
I was going to say it's a very Japanese thing, replayability. If you look back as far as Resident Evil 2 on the PlayStation, you had the time and your rating at the end of it. So it's very much okay, you got through this in 3 hours and 26 minutes.
Yeah.
And you got a B rating. Can you do it quicker and better?
Yeah.
And that idea of getting through a game, perfecting the run, is a very Japanese idea.
Yeah.
It's that idea of practicing something over and over and over again until you get really, really good at it.
And it has become very unfashionable for modern games. But Jet Set Radio isn't a modern game. And I think at that time, time. It was still the way you play a game. It's always, I think, to me, that thing is always, it's always worked for me. I've always bitten, because you complete a game and a level, and you get to the end and they go, D. And you go, fuck you, I'm doing it again. That's how my brain works.
I'm not settling for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, if it's taken everything I can to get through that level and it says D, I go, I'll take it. Fuck it. But if you've got through it and you've gone, actually, I know why that was. I want to do it again now. And it does happen. Modern games, the Bayonetta series still does it. Still gives you a rating. Still goads you into doing it again and doing it better. And that's what Jet Set Radio was. You got points for grinding longer and linking tricks and doing stuff. It made the flow of the level and being able to manage it and learn it and make it look good rewarding to do and rewarding in your rating at the end of it. Maybe I'm in the minority, and that's maybe why Jet Set Radio Future removed all that stuff. I don't know.
The only goal you're ever given is to do those graffiti spots.
Yeah.
Everything else is entirely up to you.
Yeah.
So how you get there, how you do it is entirely of your making. And you could literally just mosey through the level, walk up to each graffiti spot, do it, just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
But you don't, because it's giving you the tools to do interesting things and interact with an environment that's interesting to interact with. Yeah. Even if that interaction is literally just to grind along a hard surface. But it's a game that just begs to be played.
Yeah.
As well. It's like, okay, here's this amazing little area.
Yeah, tiny, yeah.
A lot of times, just first time you play it, you just look at it and think, where the fuck do I go?
Yeah.
There's a level you start off, and you're basically on, it's sort of like a lakeside thing with some houses or apartments.
Yeah.
You go over a wooden walkway, and the only way to go is into someone's house. So, okay, in we go. And if you're going fairly slowly and looking at what's around you, you just think, well, where the fuck do I go next? Then you notice the wall at the back of this house is a little bit broken.
Yeah.
And you think, I've got to charge through all of these. There's like 6 of these little house things combined, and I've just got to go through the wall. And after that, you just think, oh, okay, yeah, that's how I'm supposed to play this. I'm not supposed to stop and look around. Yeah. I'm not supposed to take it all in. I'm supposed to just pick a line and go.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's an experimentation thing. Okay, you tried the level. You didn't get all the graffiti things all the way through it. You fucked up whatever. You died maybe, but do it again. Have another go. Try it again. A lot of the movement things they're not really they're not laid out. Nothing glows.
That's a really good point, yeah.
I was going to ask you, but I know for a fact you've played Mirror's Edge.
I love it, yeah.
Everything in Mirror's Edge that you can climb on shows itself as something that you can climb on.
Yeah.
To a certain degree. It's a slightly different colour, or it's a very obvious from a distance thing.
Yeah.
That you can climb up to. Jet Set Radio doesn't really do that.
No.
It's just there's a rail there which you can see, or there's a fucking telegraph or power line that you can see. But until there's some spray cans on it as something you can pick up, you might not even notice it as something you can grind along.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And a lot of the environments I found with playing it recently, a lot of the environments just don't tell you where to go.
No.
But they'll sometimes show you there's a route to be taken there.
Yeah.
Because I found even looking at the map, if you pause the game and bring up the map, all it shows you is the graffiti spots.
Yeah.
On a completely flat 2-dimensional map.
Yeah.
Of a very 3D level.
Very. Tell you what, you might enjoy Jet Set Radio Future more than I do.
Really?
Yeah, I think maybe it would, what's the word? I think maybe it might be more like the Jet Set Radio that you remember.
Oh, okay. So what was it on? Just Xbox?
Just on the Xbox, unfortunately, yeah. The sort of the complexity of the stages is up a notch, which means that you can sort of find ways through and discover new things quite often. It's quite interesting. As an open world game, it's definitely better, but I never considered Jet Set Radio an open world game anyway, so it's
I've never thought of it as that.
No.
One thing that did come up when I was watching videos of this recently, I didn't know there was an end.
Did you not?
I've never finished it. I was watching videos and they were talking about like the end and the plot and where it all goes. I don't remember any of this.
Oh, it gets mad. He never skated around that fucking annoying massive turntable in the sky.
Yeah, never got there.
Oh,
Never seen it. I was watching the video and just thinking, I don't remember any of this at all. Like I said, I don't think I was ever actually very good at it.
I think it's a game that's very, and I think at the time, again, considering this thing we talked about last time out, Metropolis Street Racer being pitched as a competition to Gran Turismo, the fact that Jet Set Radio had rollerblade in it was often mentioned in the same breath as Tony Hawk's, and it's just completely ridiculous. They're nothing like the same sort of game, and I think there was people who went into it expecting that and being very, very disappointed, and that's fair. If that's what you were expecting, you were going to be disappointed by Jet Set Radio. But yeah, it was it's very much its own thing.
There was nothing like it before it.
No.
And the only things that have come out after it that are like it are the sequels and callbacks to it.
Yes, absolutely. Talking of which, have you heard of Ollie King?
Is that like Ollie?
No. Ollie King to me it sounds like a Radio 1 breakfast DJ. Ollie King. With the news. Anyway, but yeah, there was a Sega by Smilebit, by this same developer, arcade game, one of those peripheral based arcade skating game, and it was basically downhill skateboarding. In a race doing tricks, and it's of a similar aesthetic to Jet Set Radio.
I'm just looking at pictures of it. I might have played this.
I've definitely played a downhill skateboarding game. I don't think it was this one.
I've played something like this. I'm just looking at the skateboard arcade cabinet. Yeah, maybe.
I don't think I have. It's quite rare, apparently. It did come to the UK. Limited release in the UK and America, and a wide release in Japan. But yeah, this was basically, if there was a third Jet Set Radio game, it would be that. I think it's a stretch. There are people who happily say it's basically Jet Set Radio 3. I don't think so at all. I think it's made by the same people, and maybe you could argue that there's a genus there, but it's a downhill racing game. It's more like the shit bits of SSX, I suppose.
I was thinking Cool Borders.
Yeah, probably Cool Borders had a lot of racing in it, didn't it? Yeah, but very much, to me, not thematically Jet Set Radio.
I would argue to be a Jet Set Radio game, it has to have that style.
Yeah.
It has to have the feel of Jet Set Radio. You could just say, oh, it's a little bit similar in that you grind down stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't work, does it?
That's not the same.
No, absolutely, I agree. But yeah, I found that interesting. I actually found that when I was looking for cocktails, I was looking at maybe as all the different ways I tried to find a fucking cocktail for this game. I was looking at the place names and stuff, and what was it that I googled and the place names from Jet Set Radio, and somebody in a wiki somewhere, someone has got, and it said like all the places you recognise, like Benton and Tokyo and Shibuya bus terminal, and then San Francisco, London, and somewhere else. I was like, what? Have I missed something? And got very excited that maybe there was a PC level pack that I'd missed or something, but it was this game, because this one website has decided that Ollie King is basically Jet Set Radio 3, which is absolute fucking madness. I struggled with a cocktail for this. How did you get on?
I had an idea of the kind of thing that I wanted to go for, and I found a lot of, because basically my basic idea was something very bright, colourful, and just sort of more the look of it than anything else. And I found various like sort of rainbow cocktails that had like different layers and things to them, and I thought that's all well and good, but I want a cocktail I actually want to drink. Yeah. So I went for the Tequila Sunrise. So done well, it's a beautiful blend of sort of red grenadine, usually at the bottom, coming up into sort of orange and then yellow to make the beautiful color combination. But also it's a very accessible drink.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't like tequila, if somebody just gave you and said, "Hey, try this," I was like, it's quite nice. It's very orange, a lot of orange in it. It's very sweet. It's the kind of cocktail you could down quite easily.
Without a shadow of a doubt, yeah.
But enough of it, it will have you on your ass.
Indeed.
I wanted something more sort of something that felt Jet Set Radio.
Yeah.
And I thought the colour and the brightness and the brashness of the game is sort of one of the main things. Has always been the main thing for me.
How do you make your tequila sunrise?
It's 5 millilitres of grenadine, 5 millilitres of Joseph Cartron Double Creme de Cassis de Bourgogne. I think that's Ernest Bourgogne.
Ernest Bourgogne's creme de cassis.
Yeah, Ernest Bourgogne's creme. 45 millilitres of Patron Reposado tequila, or tequila.
No, Reposado tequila is different. Blanco and Reposado are two different things.
Yeah, I'll give you that. It does need to be the right tequila. 22.5 ml of orange Curacao. I'm going to pick a pronunciation and stick with it for the season.
What? Go on then, right now.
Curacao. I'm going to go for Curacao.
Fancy.
15 millilitres of lime juice, 75 millilitres of orange juice. So it's a very sweet, orangey drink.
I was going to say, mate, I don't think there's many people out in the world who haven't had a tequila sunrise.
It's quite a famous drink.
It's a very, very popular cocktail. One of the more popular cocktails.
I'll give you an example of how well known the tequila sunrise is. I once saw one made in the Harrow's pub in Cotton End. So that's your barometer for how well known a cocktail is.
There's a reference for about 4 people.
Yeah. Imagine one of 2 pubs in a village of less than 200 houses. Not the kind of place you expect any cocktail to be made, but that's the one that the guy knew how to make. So there we go. If you haven't heard of a tequila sunrise, look it up.
Yeah, watch a film. Do you know, I've never seen that film, actually. Is it young Elizabeth Shue in that one, or is that Cocktail?
That's Cocktail. I think Tequila Sunrise might have Kurt Russell in it.
Oh, I think you might be right.
Mel Gibson.
Oh, yes.
Mel Gibson, Michelle Pfeiffer, Kurt Russell.
Well, there you go. Never seen it.
And Raul Julia.
No.
And JT Walsh.
Wow. Is that stick it all in a shaker and then slap it in a glass?
How to make. Number 1, select and pre-chill a Collins glass. Number 2, prepare garnish of lime slice wheel. So nothing so far of the actual drink.
No.
Number 3, pour grenadine and cassis into an ice-filled glass. It's very important that you pour grenadine first because that sits as the bottom layer.
Of course, it's a layer.
It has to go red up into the yellow.
Yeah.
You pour in the grenadine at the bottom. You shake all the other ingredients with ice, and then you strain it very slowly in. Otherwise, you don't get the layer. I've seen it done sometimes, and the result is a beautiful progression of red at the bottom up into sort of an orange and then very yellow at the top. Yeah. I've seen other people just pour it into a glass like they don't give a shit.
It would be easy for somebody like me who is pretentious, is the word, to be dismissive of the tequila sunrise, but it's a lovely drink, and much like anything, as you just say, so many people have had it. I reckon probably pushing 3/4 of those people have had a bad one. And it's, you know, it's a as you say, it's a cocktail that is a good chunk about the presentation, as most cocktails are. It's a good chunk about the effort that your bartender takes to make it properly. And I think a lot of people would have had them without either of those things. They would have just had a jug of orange juice flavoured thing. And without tequila sunrise is a very, very nice drink when it's made properly with a bit of love and care. And it's like anything. You could make any of the 25 odd, oh God, it must be 50 odd cocktails, mate, fucking hell, that we've mentioned in season 1, made with no care or attention would be meh. Make them properly and there's something a bit special.
So what did you go for?
It was a battle. It was a long and winding road. And my long and winding road did pass through the village of Tequila Sunrise, you'll be glad to hear. I was something that I considered as well, because I was all about trying to capture the feel of the game. It was trying to capture, because it is a game with a singular identity, and I wanted to try and get a bit of that really fucking hard. Found a drink because I give up and went, fuck it, I need some names. I need a pun. If this isn't going to happen, I'm going to have to find a pun. And I found a cocktail called the Little Rebel.
Oh, okay.
The characters, the theme of Jet Set Radio is a rebellion. They
Yes.
are being downtrodden. They are being, creativity is on the shit list of Captain Nakamura. And that's what it's about. It's about rising up above that. It's a punk game. It's about rising up against authority and things. And at the same time, because of the art style and because of the character design, it is a little bit... I'm not going to use the word I was just going to use, but it's not realistic, and I just thought Little Rebel kind of suited it without meaning to undermine it in any way. But yes, I liked that name, but it also, more Lux Than Judgment, is a cocktail that looks the part, and it turns out, again, even more fortunately, tastes the part of Jet Set Radio. It's bright pink. It's not on Difford's. It's on I found it on a website called Spiritly, and it's probably brighter pink in a change to what we normally find, a brighter pink than it looks in the picture on Spiritly. It's a bright, vivid pink, served in a martini glass with a bit of orange on top. And and it's got egg white in it, so it's a milky kind of a pink. It's quite. I don't want to what's the word, stretch credulity here, but it is quite a graphic looking drink because a martini glass is very triangular, and because of the egg white in the drink and the pink in this, it's a very sort of graphic-y looking thing when it's done. So I was really pleased to find this. It was, as I said, genuinely more Lux Than Judgment, but it really does look the part. It's made with a whole bunch of different stuff. So 30ml of Scotch whiskey, 25ml of lemon juice, 25ml of grenadine, which gives it the colour, 30ml of cognac, and then the egg white and a dash of Angostura bitters. And then the recipe is to dry shake it, which is basically shaking everything together without ice, and then shake it with ice after that. I've seen that with other egg white cocktails, so I think it's probably got something to do with that. I don't really understand it, but that's all there, and you have to fine strain it. But it is really, really nice. Coming back to the tequila sunrise thing, it's just a really drinkable cocktail, and it's one of those things when it's split between cognac and whiskey as the two main spirits, it doesn't taste like either of those things. It really doesn't. It tastes fruity, but it's got that slightly a bit more depth about it than maybe a more fruit juicy kind of cocktail. Really, really bloody tasty. Unfortunately, I only had enough cognac to make one. Otherwise, I would have been drinking them all night and rather than rum and cokes. But I feel very lucky to have found this through a pun, basically, because it's really bright tasting. It's really fresh and enjoyable, and everything that Jet Set Radio is, and it looks the part. The name is right, and it's one of those perfect coming together of elements that perfectly encaptures a game that is a perfect coming together of elements. So yeah, it is called The Little Rebel. You'll find it on spiritlead.com. There will obviously be our normal link in the thing. Highly recommend it if you can be bothered to put it together, and don't be afraid of egg white. We had this conversation about White Russians on the Christmas episode and milk. Don't be afraid of milk in your cocktails. Don't be afraid of egg white in your cocktails. Yep. If you are afraid of egg white, you can use aquafaba, which is chickpea juice.
Well, I would say if you're allergic to egg white.
That too.
Something we've never really covered or considered before with any of these drinks, is it?
No.
Some things at some point may need to be substituted because of allergies.
There's a new Tokyo Highway Challenge coming out.
Really? On what?
Soon, on PC.
Oh, that's made my day.
I believe... it might need a Google, but I believe it might be the 25th of January. And that might be an early access.
That's very close.
Here's how it's going down. Next week on Cocktail Mode, we are playing and talking about the Shutokyo Highway Battle series, as it is known. First release, Shutokyo Battle 94 Drift King. But the game that we know and love as Tokyo Highway Battle. Yeah, I think we should celebrate them because there is a new one, and I was excited. I knew Dave would be excited by it.
I'm genuinely happy about that.
And yeah, I won't be upgrading my PC to play it. I'll tell you
I might. So are we doing Tokyo Highway Challenge, Tokyo Extreme Racer, Tokyo Highway Battle, Kotobi Tuner, Shitoko Racer? Which one?
Yeah, all of those.
Yeah, pick one.
Yeah. I think, to be honest with you, all of those fit into our retro. There's hundreds of these games. The original Dreamcast game is RC. Me and Dave played it back in the day, and I know for a fact that we both loved it. So it'll be one of those upbeat episodes that we so rarely get, where we just...
Well, we both like the game.
Yeah. So yeah, join us for that next time on Cocktail Mode, where gaming, like alcohol, is in our blood.